Hey everybody, we're going to get started at 7:30. So today we're going to do our second class on advice for life. And in this lesson, we're going to explore a little bit the Torah teachings that the Rebbe spoke about and emphasized some of the keys to enhancing family relationships. So we're going to talk about the family unit in different contexts, of course. Spouses, children is where most of the focus will be, but we'll speak about it also in very general terms as well. Of course, families, they may offer us invaluable treasures, love, support, sense of belonging. That's in the best case scenario. But of course, the richness of family life, it really hinges on the extent in which we invest in it as well. The more we put into our family relationships, whether between spouses, children, parents, siblings, etc., the more we get back from this great gift. You know, we're just coming from Tu B'Shvat, from Ishasa B'Shvat, not that long ago, when we speak about the idea of the very famous concept that humans are compared to trees. Compare the human beings to trees. We have the roots and the trunk and the branches and the leaves and the fruit, each one representing a different aspect of a person's life. But I think it's fair to say that family units, they also have these different elements that can be compared to roots, what sustains the tree, what sustains the family, what allows it to flourish, its trunk, the basis of it, and then the benefits, the branches, the leaves, the fruit, etc. So I want to begin really in exercise 2.1 on page 30. We'll start right from there. We'll jump right in. What are some of the attitudes, some of the behaviors, some of the values that might help sustain and strengthen harmony within a family? What are some of those things that help with that? Go right ahead. Jump right in, somebody.
Certain goals that everyone's in agreement with.
So goals that everyone is in agreement with.
Hopefully in agreement.
Well, if they're not in agreement with it, that will not strengthen the family.
Good communication.
Okay, so that's a very practical behavior, good communication. What else? You want to say something, Karen?
Yeah, practices.
Having Shabbat dinner together, okay?
Respect for each other.
Respect for one another, great. Especially probably in all relationships, that's critical. Good. Anybody?
Love.
Love. Oh. Wouldn't that be nice? What else? Some of our folks there on Zoom, you guys can chime in. Don't be shy. Anybody else? What was that? Respect. Somebody else said respect. Good. Okay, so these are, I'm sorry?
Common goals and objectives.
Common goals and objectives. Yes, good. Okay. So today we're going to discuss these responses, and we're going to delve into a little bit, at least, the Rebbe's guidance for families, and hopefully some new insights into things that, some of them that have already been mentioned, but some new insights, a new wrinkle, something else, a new perspective that maybe can help. And again, as we said last time, but I think it's even more appropriate today, is that even if somebody has an incredibly powerful and strong and phenomenal family relationship, this is something that there's no limit to how to strengthening it, to getting better at it, to having more out of it. So regardless, today almost every family has some part of the family that we don't speak loudly about. We have some part of the family that, we don't talk to, or doesn't talk to us, whatever it is. Almost every family has that little, dark secret. And so whether we're talking about those elements or strengthening a family unit, but even one that has a very, very strong family unit, nevertheless, we can always be, you speak about somebody who's healthy. Well, you can always be more healthy. Family unit can always be more healthy. And so very often, these letters that we're going to see in a moment from the Rebbe, and by the way, there are 39 volumes of personal correspondence of the Rebbe that's been printed. And those are volumes that they only printed the letters so far. They're still coming, they're still going through letters. But the 39 volumes of letters, those are letters that pertain to advice that has importance for the public. Like there are some general ideas there, and they've already come up with 39 volumes of that. And when it came to family relationships, usually somebody was reaching out to the Rebbe either in crisis or with a problem or with an issue that they wanted addressed. And so if you've ever been called upon by a friend or by somebody else who says, oh, I have a problem, my spouse, my child, my this, my that. So, hearing only one side of the story. By the way, this is now not from the Rebbe, this is from me. But something that I've experienced just in my years as a rabbi. So a lot of times we want to give a lot of support to a person who calls up or reaches out. And we want to be helpful to them. So we listen closely and say, that's terrible. I can't believe they would do that to you. Oh, terrible. That's awful. And then you might say, kind of emphasize and build it, and just so that that person feels supported and heard. And the fact of the matter is, though, especially when it comes to a family, that actually can be about one of the worst things you can do, believe it or not. Because it's one thing to listen and to hear, to say, wow, that must have really hurt. That must feel terrible. To acknowledge the feelings and the emotions, but not to acknowledge the outlook of it. First and foremost, if you do this type of work with people, you find out that there's always another perspective. Certainly, there's always another perspective. And hardening that person's position, the only one who's going to get hurt is that, well, not the only one, but one of the people who's going to be most hurt by hardening the position is the person who came to you as a friend to help out. And so sometimes the thing for the friend to do is to listen. Wow, that sounds awful. Have you considered maybe finding a way to sit down and talk about it? Have you, we're going to see that the Rebbe has some advice that's maybe a little different than what people are used to today, but that's just as an aside. But we're going to see it even in the way the Rebbe addresses one party in a marriage. The person's coming to the Rebbe with a complaint that there's a problem in the marriage, things are difficult. So here in text 1, just look out closely for how the Rebbe deals with this. Page 31, text 1. I received some information about the relationship at home, but I do not know to what extent it reflects the actual situation. Hence, I want to convey to you some thoughts in light of what the relationship should be, according to the Shulchan Aruch, the Jew's practical guide to life. If the relationship is indeed in keeping with it, so in other words, if in fact you're doing everything you need to do according to Jewish law, then the purpose of this letter will be simply to strengthen and deepen it, as there's always room for improvement in all matters of goodness and holiness, Torah and mitzvahs. On the other hand, if indeed it's not quite what it should be, I trust that since the Torah is surely a lamp unto your feet, quoting a verse, you will bring it up to the desired level, and you do it with joy and gladness of heart. So again, even in this very short thing, which so far doesn't say any, this is just an introduction, how to approach marital, familial issues as the one responding to a letter or responding to somebody, turning to you, a friend, an acquaintance, certainly a family member. Look how sensitive we have to be. In other words, what as I said before, what most people tend to do is want to give support to the questioner. It doesn't matter which side they're on. And the Rebbe shows us over here something very, very careful, like, look, I hear that that's how you're presenting. But if you want my advice, I just want to tell you, again, I heard one side and I get it. But let's talk about the general idea of what we want to accomplish over here. Then we can, without taking sides, because taking sides is really a very dangerous thing. I heard from a good friend that what often happens is that a friend or an acquaintance or another family member gets involved in a family fight between two people. And somehow or another, over the years or over time, the family members can reconcile at times. But the friends who took a side, they can't reconcile. They can't look, story comes to mind where this woman who had a story that her husband he had an affair, and she was obviously beside herself, and she got all of her friends, and everybody was furious at how could this guy do this to her and all of this. Their marriage went on, they reconciled, they figured it out, they went to counseling, they dealt with what they dealt with. But those friends could never again look at this husband ever again as he was just rotten, miserable to them forever. And of course, that created a great distance in this whole friendship between these families, because it was impossible for them to get over it. Anyway, so that's just between us. This is a good lesson just in how the Rebbe starts the letter, how we have to approach others who are dealing with crisis when it comes to family. Okay. So many families today, it goes without saying, I think, that there are many, many families out there that lack the cohesion that we would like to have in family. And of course, the results are very, very unfortunate. And the Torah's teachings on this are profound, and they go to the heart of the sanctity, the holiness of the family unit. If we think back in American society, in American culture, if you look back, what was sort of the coming apart at the seams of family life? You look at the 60s and 70s, when so much changed, and it really that was sort of in a way a catalyst for dramatic changes in the family unit. In the winter of 1974, the Rebbe delivered a number of public addresses on the issue of family and contemporary society, and emphasizing in the strongest terms how vital it is. And by the way, not just addressing the Jewish community, addressing the culture, the society at large. And the Rebbe spoke about the concerns that he had for the lack of cohesion in the family unit. So let's take a look at page 33. This is taken from a talk then in 1974. One of the elements crucial for any nation, especially the Jewish nation, is the preservation of the family unit. Unfortunately, this institution has become utterly neglected. The focus on the family unit is lacking somewhat or significantly, even among those who genuinely try to follow a Torah lifestyle. Set aside time for Torah study, they fulfill mitzvahs meticulously, and even act with self-sacrifice to influence other Jews who are spiritually disengaged. Yes, the father and the mother and the children are walking a single path, the path of Torah mitzvahs. Nevertheless, they do not walk this path as a family. We readily observe the regrettable effects of the father, mother, sons, and daughters living in 4 distinct worlds. So here the Rebbe is saying, even in somebody mentioned before, the goals and mitzvahs and all of that, no doubt that those are helpful, and we're going to talk about that. The Rebbe says that conceptually, first and foremost, we have to understand that the Torah places an incredible emphasis on the family unit, just for the sake of the family unit. Before we get into Torah mitzvahs, before we get into all those things, the family unit as a family unit has validity, has importance, and incredible weight just for itself. So what happens? Let's just take a moment. What happens when the family unit breaks down? what happens when a family is not functioning as a unit? What are some of the things that happens to the individuals in the family? What are the outcomes?
People become withdrawn in their own worlds.
Okay, people become isolated, right? In extreme cases, they become violent because of that isolation, because of that emotional support that they don't have. Okay, good. What else? Somebody's mentioned something.
Children act out.
Children act out. Good.
Financial difficulties.
Could bring to financial difficulties, not having
Stress.
sort of stress, certainly. Right. Rather, you mentioned before, you mentioned violence. So the stages of this are, rather than treating one another as allies on the same side of the table, so to say, right? Family members, they find themselves competing with one another and ultimately being in conflict with one another. And certainly the emotional scars of that are deep and profound. What else in terms, yes?
Role models. People, if you don't have role models in your own family, it's very difficult to go outside the family to work with them. And they see now intergenerationally the price of not having one star.
Very good, very good. All right, so basically we lose the entire structure by which we can transmit values, all of these things to the next generation. That unit of the family is the primary way in which that is done. It is the most important way in which it's done. And not having it causes a lack of those values and the other things to be able to be transmitted. You're talking about role models, etc. Yes, sir.
It affects relationships outside the family. Friends, family, and synagogue.
So it can spill over. It can, by the way, certainly in community, when families fall apart, there's no question that there's a huge amount of collateral damage, people taking sides and further splitting people, even further, even beyond the family itself. Very interesting study done in I think the last one was 2021. So since 1994, the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia, so they have surveyed thousands upon thousands of teens to identify the factors that are associated with drug use and substance abuse, etc. And after drinking drugs, whatever, and after incredible reams of data, one of the key things that they found is something as simple that compared to teens that have regular family dinners 5 to 7 nights a week, those who have infrequent, up to 3 and less a week, they're 4 times more likely to use tobacco. They are more than twice, about 2.5 times as likely to abuse alcohol, 2.5 times more likely to use marijuana, and almost 4 times as likely to say as teenagers that they plan on or they think in the future that they're going to try drugs later on. Family dinners. I guess, I'm sure there's a lot that goes in. It's not just the dinner. That's a certain value system. That's a certain way that it is. But yes, but it's, just something as practical as literally as eating dinner together as a family. It has a profound, measurable effect on teenagers and their future lives. That's how sort of magnified it is. Okay. So we spoke about what some of the effects are. What are some elements that contribute? What are some of the elements that contribute to the difficulty in maintaining cohesion? What are some of the things, and I guess particularly in modern society, what are some of the things that we're facing as a society that make it so difficult to hold families together, whereas once upon a time maybe it was quite a bit easier? Divorce,
Job loss.
Well, divorce is the breaking of the family unit. I'm asking what brings it about. Yes.
Now more than ever, we have both parents working a lot.
no question.
Probably.
So it's not a commentary on good, bad, or indifferent that we have two, two partners working. But the fact of the matter is that having the mother out of the home, working in the workforce, et cetera, it changes things completely. Pursuing careers, it used to be that motherhood was sort of the occupation, it was the focus, and today that focus is far more diffused. Yes,
I was gonna say, I don't wanna like get into it with anybody, but there's an awful lot of studies that say that women have always worked outside the home. The thing is, if you're commuting an hour each way to do it, I think it's about scale of community and more than it is, does anybody go to work? You know, do people go to the market and is it a half a block away? Or, do I drive to Chicago every day to go?
okay, so let's call it the extent of which one is out of the home for the sake of work or
All
whatever.
parts, I mean,
Right.
all participants, the
Okay.
kids are at sports and people are on being bused and, the scale. Our communities have expanded, which is good, but it has a price.
Okay, good. Somebody else wants to say,
And-
I'm sorry? Oh, yes,
Oh, social media?
social media. So technology and social media. Let's talk for a second about social media. What are some of the factors that social media brings along that actually affect families? Let's say one or two.
Rumors.
Kids are buried in their iPhones, almost, they sit in front of the table and instead of
And
eating, they're watching
like this.
We're talking about teenagers. They sit at the table with their phone. That's all of us if we don't watch out. Yeah, so, yeah, I agree. So first of all, we're not present with one another, right? We're present with a whole different world on that little screen, right? Okay, what else in social media? So you said that what? Rumors and whatever, okay?
Ruin reputations.
Okay, ruined reputations, good. What else?
Peer pressure, but it's a different kind of peer pressure when you have it with the social media.
Right, but let's talk specifically about the effect on families. I'm not disagreeing, but what else?
Well, the more time you're on social media is the less time you're gonna be with family.
Right, okay, so that's what we said before about not being present, right? I think that can be an opposite effect too, right? So certainly if you ask a teenager, they'll say, well, all my friends are on this, right? So my friends are on this, so I have my friendship, I have my relationships through this little thing. I don't need relationships in the real world. I got relationships right here. Because people have an innate need to have some kind of social interaction. The problem is that social interaction is far less powerful, valuable, whatever it is, and it definitely takes away from the social interaction, which otherwise would have been right here, right now. Okay, what other factors are there? So you spoke a little bit about, yeah,
Sorry, we're not continuing with social media. We're moving on to something else.
you can do social media if you want.
Oh, I was gonna say that Facebook came about when I was entering college. And so I feel like I have a unique perspective on and Instagram obviously came a little bit later, but my kids are little and I'm never letting my kids have a smartphone because I feel
boy.
like
If I would have a penny for every parent who said that, oh, boy.
I feel like
I wish you luck.
Thank you. I feel like social media and the way that kids digest it or consume it or whatever is it creates this negative self-image, self-esteem problem that's so pervasive,
No question.
and that totally affects the family also.
Okay,
When-
good, right,
when-
when I know that when my kids are on social media for a long time, talk about that negative thing, they get off that thing. I didn't realize they were on the phone, I put down my phone, somebody grabbed it, they're on it. And now, 3 hours later, the kid is in some different world, he gets up, he's angry. He's totally angry, right? He, whatever it is, they're just not social, they're not capable of it. Yes, okay, good, I love that. But
We've
good luck.
lost the ability to talk to each other.
What?
We've lost it. We've lost the ability to actually have conversations in many
Right,
respects.
you said that, good. Okay, so let's move on from social media for a second, yes?
Body image and sexuality, the blatant frequency of what's online. is
Oh, okay, so we're going back to the,
Shocking to me.
okay, fine. What else? I mean, we can go earlier than social media. We talk about technology in general, right? TV. Even before the advent of social media, where you have that whole world at your fingertips, you also had TV, cable TV. You had, it was a big thing then. They had 100 channels, right?
100 channels of nothing.
It's nothing, exactly. But people spent inordinate amount of time in front of the in front of the screen, right? So that's very similar. What else? What other societal changes have gone on?
Kids are involved in so much. And they're expected to be involved in so much, whether it's sports or whatever, they're constantly on the go.
Okay, that might be, by the way, a very I'm saying in our world,
Yes.
it's an affluent, that's additionally in the affluent community where,
On the other side, kids are sitting at home with nothing to do. So
okay,
you've got that issue, so they go and find things to do that may not be the most productive.
okay, that probably always was, but yes, I agree with you. I think that there's definitely become this certainly in let's call it the middle class, the upper middle class, sort of where the Jews are. There's definitely this thing of, you gotta be in all this stuff and whatever. Okay, good. Yes.
I just wanted to add to that, when we had our family pictures taken, my photographer had like 3 kids, and she was saying that the days of like when I was a kid, where you played basketball in the fall and soccer in the spring and whatever in whatever season, are over. She's like, your kid has to pick one sport, and they do it every single day of the year. They do it on the off season, they do it on the weekends. She's like, there is
I
no
still
rest.
tell my kids to go run in the street and dodge traffic, just like I did. That's what I did. We all came out okay. It was all fine.
I just
You
thought
know,
it
go
was an
climb a
interesting,
tree.
like, change in attitude though, like, from when I was a kid, like, the attitude towards kids is different now, where we're like pushing them to
And at the
be,
same time, you push
like-
them while they're in a bubble. Yeah, I know.
right, to be like hyper successful and
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, yeah.
From a
Okay,
really,
good.
really.
I think that one other thing maybe that wasn't
Less pressure.
mentioned is in society and that in general, there's really, and maybe it goes by without thinking about it, there's an intense emphasis on individualism. You're not supposed to be part of the crowd. You're not supposed to conform in any way, shape, or form to anything. Individualism is a very, very, very big thing. And it's something that we don't usually think about necessarily. But if you think about where we are today with that versus, let's go way back, the 50s, right? You're talking about night and day, absolute night and day. Any form of conforming itself is like, oh, there's something wrong with you. You're prehistoric. You're backward, And of course, when it comes to a family unit, it has the same effect, right? What are you going on with your parents? Like, what's wrong with you? Where's your, stand up for yourself, that kind of thing. So all of these factors are very, very powerful societal draws or pulls that really have a tremendous impact on the family. So there's fewer forces that unify us, and many more that pull us apart today than probably any time that in our memory, certainly, and really in the in the last number of I don't know when we could find before when it was. So this is all part of the dysfunction and even the breakdown of families and society. Let's take a look then. How do we deal with these challenges? Let's take a look what Torah says how to do this. So before we do this, I want to just watch a quick video where we will see from the Rebbe some, sort of a perspective of underscoring the incredible importance of family. There's 3 little pieces on this. The first about the nachas of children, how that is more important than anything else in the world. The second thing he talks about is the Rebbe's doctor will speak about how the Rebbe how precious it was, his time simply with his wife, having tea together. And finally, talking about even for business, even for a bank manager, that having a healthy family life can actually transform and can actually have effects, positive effects in the business. Go ahead.
In 1970, Rabbi Nosson Gerard and his
No.
wife set out on shepherds, establishing the Chabad.
There's the sounds.
Hang on, everybody. Full technology stuff. Yeah, go back to Zoom and you gotta do sound
Yeah.
over there. That's up on top. Seven.
Center.
Oh,
Okay, yeah, the guys online.
it's not sharing.
Just a second, guys. We're working on some audio for you. Let's just keep it going. We
Okay.
don't have to.
Yeah.
By the way. Wrong clip. The wrong clip. It's the second clip.
No, it's the first one. It was listed as one.
Okay.
It's
What's it?
Not the right clip. Can you go to it's kind of the right clip?
Do we do the next one?
That's the. Okay, so we're gonna see what this means. So the Rebbe spoke about it both in terms, so, I mean, again, these are some small stories. But we're talking about it both in terms of parents and children, that there is no greater blessing than that of nachas from children. And by the way, nachas from children, it refers to anyone really who one considers family, that one has an impact on, the ability to have an impact on and to have a deep and close relationship with. This is also considered nachas from children, from family. He also speaks about it in terms of a spousal relationship. Again, for the Rebbe to speak about it in terms of is as important as putting on tefillin. This is like, it's a mitzvah from the Torah, whatever. Yes, spending time together with one's loved ones. This is critical. This is as important as putting on tefillin. And finally, this idea that it also impacts our professional lives. Having a healthy family relationship also impacts our professional life. This is also another idea that he emphasizes. Now, this idea, in those talks of 1974, which were very intense, the Rebbe introduced a couple of interesting ideas that I want to just cover in the next couple texts. Page 34. And this is a Torah idea that he emphasized, and he has it in many places. He says, when God counted the Jewish people, in addition to the census of the entire nation, which equaled 603,550, the Torah emphasizes and repeats that its members were counted according to their families, to the houses of their fathers, meaning that they were counted as family units, right? So each one of these people, we're talking about as a family unit. The omniscient God, Hashem, he knew how many Jews there were. He knew how many Jews there were. God knows everything. So when he's counting people, he's demonstrating his care and his concern for his people. That's how we're told. Talmud says, what do you need to count for? It's like somebody who counts, his most precious gifts. But Hashem here doesn't only want to show love for the Jewish people in general, as it does in the Torah, but rather specifically as a family unit, which is something that most people don't generally think about. The counting is done as a family. And that's because the family unit is really the very pinnacle of sanctity, of holiness. And here's a mystical teaching that he shared at that time. He says like this in text 4. The Torah's mystical teachings strongly emphasize the importance of the family unit. The minimum requirement to fulfill the mitzvah, be fruitful and multiply, right? The first mitzvah in the Torah, you should be fruitful and multiply, is to give birth to a son and a daughter. Listen, that you can't, you can't dictate that, but you can try. So Kabbalah and Chassidus explain that this is hinted at in the name of God, which is spelled with the letters Yud and Hey, followed by Vav and Hey. The Yud corresponds to the father, the first Hey to the mother. And I'll, in just a moment, explain why that is. The Vav alludes to the male child, and the final Hey to the daughter. A family with all four elements, like the mitzvah is required, a father, a mother, a daughter, and a son, is a complete representation of the divine name, of the Shem Hashem. It follows then that just as the four letters of the divine name were inscribed together as a word, they become a unique entity, God's personal name, so the individuals of a family are fundamentally transformed into new existence when they become a family unit. Okay, so the idea of Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, this has to do with the Kabbalistic sphirot, that there's feminine attributes and masculine attributes. And again, I don't think there's time now to go into why it is that the Yud represents the masculine, the Hey represents the feminine. But suffice it to say that each one of these, it's not just because it's cute, because it's four letters and there's four members that they're talking about, a father and a mother and a male child and a female child. No, it actually corresponds to the feminine and the masculine. And so, but the idea here that he introduces is that just as these letters were, when they're disparate, they're letters in the Hebrew alphabet. It's very nice. But sanctity, holiness, it rests upon when they're all pulled together as a single word. In a similar vein, having two Jews is a wonderful thing. Having two people is a wonderful thing. But when they operate together as a family unit, there's an entirely different level of holiness that it expresses. Just being as a family unit. And the same way the letters, what do? They make up God's name. The sanctity that we're talking about, the holiness that we're talking about, is that it is a representation of godliness in this world, and that is a family. That's a family. And the Torah teaches that the divine dwelling is specifically in the family setting. If we take a look at text 5, the final one of this teaching. So, in communicating his directive to build a holy temple, we're about to come up to it next week in the Chumash, starts a whole long section, 5 Torah portions. The biggest single item, biggest single issue in the Torah, 5 full Torah sections, is about the construction of the tabernacle, the construction of the temple. And the question is why? Why is that so important? And we know the answer is because it really is a representation of what is at the heart of Judaism, which is about creating holy in the material world, in the physical world. That's what the whole Mishkan is about. That's what the whole temple is about. Not about a place to run away and pray. It's not a place to cloister oneself. The idea is we take actual physical materials and we make it holy, and when we do so, God dwells within us. But interestingly enough, the term that's used, it says in the opening statement is, V'asu li mikdash, build for me a temple, v'shachanti b'tocham, and through doing so, I will dwell within them, within the people. Our sages note the anomaly within the verse. That the verse says within them, the Jewish people, instead within the temple. And this informs us that God wishes to dwell not only in his temple, but actually within each and every one of us. So in truth, God's dwelling within us is not a secondary objective, but it's really the primary directive. For if God's primary home were the temple, the Torah should have stated clearly that God would reside within it, that God would reside in the temple, while at the same time finding a way to hint at the concept that God also dwells within us. But instead, the reverse is the case. The Torah states openly, I will dwell within them, indicating that this is the primary objective. The opening verse, build for me a temple, is simply the method. You want to know how God dwells within us? It's simply the method by which the primary goal of dwelling within the Jewish people can be achieved. Where is the physical location of God's dwelling among us? It is a home where there's father, mother, sister, brother. They form a cohesive family unit. If you think about the Jews of old, they're going up to the temple. Okay, so we know we have the Kotel, we have the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall. And they make their way up to Jerusalem, climb the mountains, they get up there, and there's this incredible edifice. You have to go up many, many, many stairs to get up the mountain. And then on top of the mountain, you go up more stairs. And then you go onto the platform. Then you go over there to the temple. And it's this gleaming, beautiful, incredible edifice. And people are streaming from all over the place. You have this vision of what this could have looked like. And what we discover that all of that whole holiness, that entire thing is all a representation of what it means to walk into your home. You walk into your home, you're walking into a holy place. You're walking into a Beis HaMikdash. An incredibly different view of what's happening every time, you open up the garage and you go through the door. It's like, whatever, kick off your shoes, drop the bags, throw off your coat. No, you're walking into a temple, you're walking into a Beis HaMikdash. And it starts, all of that, integral to it, it's to start with the family. I always, in different courses or different classes that I've given, just about whether it's mindfulness, whether it's prayer, whatever it is, I still have this image that we once spoke about in the class that, at least for a person like me, I'm usually on the phone until I get into the garage, and sometimes I'm on for another 10 seconds in the garage. But most of us, I don't know, we're listening to something, whether it's music, whether our head is somewhere else. And oftentimes, when I'll come home, one of my kids will come out the door and, they have things, they need stuff, they want to talk about stuff, and I'm still on the phone. So if I don't have the 30 seconds to decompress from the phone to walking in the house, to actually being present and in that moment, there are moments on the kids. It's not the way it's supposed to be. But the truth is that imagine if every time you walk to your front door, before you walked in the front door, you took 30 seconds. Really, that's what kissing the mezuzah is supposed to be about. Take a second to recognize that there's sanctity here. This isn't just my, place of shelter. It's not just a place of, this is my home. And it's a place where my primary purpose in this world is fulfilled. This is the place. This is walking up to the Western Wall and to the Temple Mount and to the Beis HaMikdash. I'm walking into my home. This is the place where Hashem dwells. It's a place of sanctity. It's a place of holiness. So that idea, that concept, and by the way, it's one thing, imagine if we treated it that way. In time, by the way, not when they're really young, but in time the kids will start to think about it this way. When I talk about an attitude for them, for themselves, when they grow up, that they should have healthy relationships, that they should have a healthy home, that they should have a place that a home is a sacred place. I'm not just talking about the space of the home, the physical space. I'm talking about the home, the unit, the family, that is sacred. If we do that, there's no doubt that they're going to be profoundly impacted. There's no doubt about it, let alone that we'll have more patience with the kids. I'm not even getting into that. But just that idea, I'm walking into a sacred space. So, okay. So this is the method, this is the unit by which God chose to transform that all of Torah, all of mitzvahs, all of the idea of the transformation of the world, of making an impact on the world. The primary unit by which we do it is a family unit. Okay. Now, in our day and age, I think, again, we're talking about kids, and I would say specifically even more so when it comes to teenagers, when people think usually about family, the benefits of family. We said before, well, there's emotional support and it saves money, you can do better, there's better finances possibly. There's a lot of benefits that come along with family, whether it's division of responsibilities, whether it's shared responsibilities, whatever it is. Usually when we think about family, we think about the benefits of family, we think about, what have you done for me lately? If it's working for me, if the good stuff of family is working for me, that's great. Yay, I love family. It's all working out. I have a lot of benefits. But teenagers, let's say, right? I'm hearing the clocking. Teenagers, I'm just using them as a metaphor, really. They're just like, magnified. But all of us have a little teenager inside of us. They say it the way they feel it at that moment. And you know what? They have friends outside of the house. I don't need any of this. They don't need their parents. They think they don't. They don't need their parents for this. They don't need them for that. And that. What have you done for me lately? That's the feeling that they have. But all of us have that a little bit. The truth is, imagine, again, with that same theme of walking up to the home with that sacredness, imagine if we have instilled in ourselves the question, not what have you done for me lately, what have I done for my family lately? What have I done for my siblings lately? What have I done for my parents lately? What have I done for my spouse lately? What have I done for my children lately? I'm not talking about that I shoved them out the house in the morning and put them in the car and got them off to school. You know what I'm talking about. They're gone. I'm exhausted already. I haven't even started my day. I'm ready to go to sleep. I need a nap. Right? So that's stuff you gotta do. Right? That's stuff that's like, feel like we're just getting through. But imagine if we thought about, wait a second, what have I done to nurture that family a little bit today? What have I done to nurture whatever loved one it is today? So not just because it's going to give me something back, but because this unit, this concept is key and it's core and it's right at the center of our very purpose in existence. The very purpose for which we're created, to create a dwelling place for God here in this world. Like we said before, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Hashem's name dwelling here in this world, it happens in this kind of unit. That's how it happens. And so it's because of this that Rebbe sort of emphasizes over and over and over again this idea of family cohesion. And it's true that for families that are at risk of drifting apart, it turns out that the Torah model of it allows for many, many avenues to pull people together, to pull family together. So let's take a look here at text 6 on page 38. We're going to go through a number of texts. So the Rebbe writes like this: I trust it's unnecessary to emphasize to you at length that the Jewish way of life, together with its customs, etc., is not only very significant in general, but also in every detail and the very order of things. In light of this, it becomes obvious how important are peace and harmony between a husband and a wife, since the mitzvah of making peace between a husband and wife is counted among the mitzvot whose fruits a Jew enjoys in this world, while the capital remains in the world to come. These are mentioned right at the beginning of the Siddur, together with the morning blessings, which are said even before starting the actual morning prayers. So as part of the morning blessing, we recite a Mishnah, which describes that the relationship between the family, this is something that is so profound that any benefit we get in this world, it's all interest. The capital sits and waits. This is like the biggest part of the world to come is the idea of creating peace in a family. That's how vital it is. That's how important it is. And with this approach in mind, it will prove somewhat easier to understand. Now, by the way, this is an answer to a question where somebody writes to the Rebbe that they're having a conflict and they're struggling. And the guy says, the other party, the wife, the husband, whoever it's written to, that they're they're so wrong, they just so don't get it. And this is how the Rebbe is responding. He says, first and foremost, you have to understand the value of it. The value of getting along is not just so you should be able to get along. It lies at the very heart of existence. And then he says, with this approach in mind, it will prove somewhat easier to understand that even if one party were to be completely in the right, or almost completely in the right, while the other party was completely in the wrong, or almost completely in the wrong, it would still be incumbent upon both parties to do everything in their power to restore peace and harmony. The Rebbe then goes on to say in the 3 dots that usually it's not the case that only one party's in the right. He goes on to say that, that's just not usually the case. It takes 2. That being said, then he says, and as to the situation itself, namely who is right and who is wrong, I cannot, of course, go into this, nor is it necessary in light of what has been said above. Everybody wants to, what do they say? That kids are more willing to be happy than right, and adults they'd rather be right than happy. The Rebbe is saying over here, really, you want me to go and adjudicate who's right and who's wrong? Is that really the issue here? Is that going to help anybody? In light of what I've just said, that your very purpose is tied up in actually getting along and making peace between one another, is that what's important at this moment? What's important is that you guys make every effort to pull this together without concern for who's right or wrong. And he says, I can't say who's right or wrong anyway. But the important thing is, as already stated, is to strengthen the family ties, this being the overriding consideration. However, he says, but I need to be heard. He says it would be well if you could find a mutual friend before whom both of you can unburden yourself in a frank exchange of grievance. It is possible that an outsider, who at the same time is a friend, might see more objectively and find the best way to straighten things out, and in the soonest time possible, so that once again peace and harmony may reign in the home. Just for the record, this is something very different than most people think of doing. This is, long after. This is already, again, this is in 1970. There's plenty of family therapists. Today, most people don't consider doing this at all. Most people, okay, if we have a problem, if we finally admit that we're really, struggling, okay, now starts the whole process of trying to find a therapist, one that lines up, the one that doesn't, and you first have to go through 4 therapists, and then we decide that no therapist can possibly fully understand their situation. One of the spouses is happy if the therapist takes their side, and the other side is unhappy because they didn't hear me. I've been through this, we've all seen this. If you have friends or whatever. So in my role as a rabbi, I do see people from time to time who come along, and the truth is, what the Rebbe is saying here is that oftentimes you don't. The point is, you don't need a professional with a PhD or with a degree from this place or that place. There are some times that you need a friend who understands your situation, who cares deeply about both parties. They're a close friend with both, and they want to see them. Their interest is far less in getting into their underlying issues and far more about seeing how can we bring these 2 people together. They're both my friends. I care deeply about them. And when somebody speaks to the parties from a place of care and concern, of personal care and concern, very often the objections to hearing what they have to say, or that somebody came along and said something that might be a little bit difficult for one of the parties to hear, it can actually often be more effective than even a professional or somebody who does this all of their life. So this is letter number 1. Letter number, yes, Jeff.
I would agree in concept, but I have a sense that to do that kind of role requires somebody with enormous sensitivity, enormous intellect, and enormous articulation to be able to do it well. And if it's not done well, I think it can be very destructive.
Yeah. So again, the Rebbe is not saying here that this is the right way in every case, not at all. And the Rebbe is also not saying that if the situation has deteriorated so far, where this has been going on for years and there's deep underlying issues, I don't think he's saying that either. However, there's far more cases that as things maybe start to go south and people have misunderstandings or struggle in a certain area, I don't, what the Rebbe is saying over here is, not always do you have to be the greatest genius in order to help the other person. You can help the other person with again, the objectivity of an outsider. The two parties have skin in the game. Two parties have a hardened position that they're trying to protect or trying to deal with. The outsider has neither of those positions. The outsider can be much more objective about what they're hearing, what they're seeing, and can help possibly the other person see that as well. So again, I agree in clinical cases or whatever, like it, but very often it doesn't rise to that. Doesn't rise to that. Okay, so text 7. Again, similar idea. Again, somebody writes to the Rebbe about all the problems they're having, and the other person is wrong and they're not listening. Our Torah teaches that as water reflects a face, so does one heart respond to another. I see from your letter that you are willing to do everything that depends on you that there should be shalom bayis, peace and harmony in the home. As a practical businessman, you're surely implementing this in actual practice, and therefore confident that the above quotation from the Torah will be fulfilled also in the present case. I just want to tell you, when I read this letter, and after reading a lot of letters from the Rebbe is saying, maybe you guys can unpack this a little bit. What is the Rebbe saying over here? What is the Rebbe really saying here?
Take a look at your own self.
Yeah,
I think the water reflects the face is talking about looking at like a pond and seeing yourself.
that's not what it means here. It means that as we behave to one, so the other behaves to us. That's the meaning of that verse. But I think you're right. The Rebbe is saying two things. He's saying, if it's true that you in fact are really willing to do anything, it'll work out. And if you say you're willing to do anything and you're not seeing results, you might want to consider that the other person is reflecting back what you're giving them as well. In other words, that's how he starts with this line, this idea. Wait a second, it takes two. When you treat somebody well, you say that you're ready to do anything, right? If you're ready to do anything, your wife or your husband will come around. That will go a long way in helping them start to reciprocate in the same way. Oh, you're not seeing it? I wonder if in fact you're really expressing that, or you're just saying it, but not necessarily doing it. That's what he says, I'm sure you'll be implementing this in practice as well. So I want to take advantage of the opportunity, since you've written to me, to emphasize again the enormous importance of shalom bayis, so much so that our Torah, called Torah's emes, the Torah of truth, because it presents truth, declares that when a husband and wife are worthy, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, abides among them. Obviously, every effort is worthwhile to ensure God's presence in the home, with all that it means in terms of his blessings, materially and spiritually. Hence, even when one thinks they are 100% right, it pays to conciliate for the sake of peace, and especially for the sake of the abiding Shekhinah as above. There's also the assurance of our sages in such matters. Yagaiti u'matzasa, try hard, and you will succeed. So this idea, answering the question that the whole transactional attitude that so much pervades relationships, hey, I did this, where are you? How come it's only me putting in? Where's your portion? Right? The scorekeeping and there's so much of that. And the Rebbe is saying, he's saying that whole model is so off the mark when we speak about a family. That's not it's not meant to be transactional. It's so, once we recognize the Torah's view on it, and when this model becomes sort of part of our outlook, our perspective, so we'll be so much more willing, hopefully, to invest without seeking the return commensurate with what I'm putting in. And so the focus shifts away from asserting my rightness and my righteousness, and instead the focus becomes determining how can I make the situation work for all the parties involved. And as long as we're willing to put in the effort that's necessary. Okay, so this is sort of a broad perspective on the whole thing. Once we have that perspective in place, now let's talk about practical takeaways, how to actually implement this. And like I said before, this isn't for dysfunctional families per se. This is for all of us, because if we're healthy, we can definitely always get healthier. So the Torah urges us to invest in family. And the Rebbe gives some very, very practical, concrete steps to do so. So the first thing is, the Rebbe writes in text 8, one solution for this challenge, again, this is this talk in 1974. One solution for this challenge is to emphasize something that is already important for other reasons. So we have things in our life, in Jewish life, that are very important. But the Rebbe says there are residual benefits that should be emphasized for the sake of family, even if I'm not emphasizing for its essential reason, you can emphasize it for the sake of family. Efforts should be made to ensure that all families come together, beginning with Friday evening, especially on Friday night when the Shabbat meal is served. We're not talking about the whole Shabbos. We're not even talking about keeping the whole Shabbos. We're talking about the idea that Friday night, which is already important, the Torah makes a huge deal out of Shabbat. But you know what? There's an added benefit, and maybe it needs to be emphasized just for the sake of the family, that parents and children should gather in the same room, around the same table, engaging in a conversation fitting for Shabbat. And on Shabbat, it's easier for the family to unite, because family members aren't engaged, or maybe don't have to be engaged in their weekly endeavors. When the family nurtures this unity on Shabbat, it will experience unity throughout the week. The factor that unites them, cultivated during the Shabbat meal, will prevail over the differing focus areas, so that their differences only complement one another instead of clash with one another. And achieving such unity within the family is not likely to occur spontaneously, because the importance of the family unit has been overlooked for several years. So we must acknowledge that this area demands dedicated attention and effort. Fortunately, the Talmud assures us that diligent work will yield positive results. No, don't expect that, one day we're going to wave a magic wand and say, okay, everybody, we're getting together for Shabbos, okay, everybody, and all the kids are going to come running and say, oh, Mom, you came up with such a good idea. I can't believe it. I wish I would have had this for the last, 15 years. That's not going to happen. They're going to come kicking and screaming. They're going to fight. The kids are going to be like, oh, all my friends are out. How can you do this to me? You miserable, old whatever. You're right. They're going to do all of that. But nevertheless, the benefits of it, the idea of, so you have to think about, okay, so how are we going to make it fun? How are we going to make it interesting? For a child who's rebelling against that or struggling with it, and by the way, it doesn't have to be a child, it could be an adult too. So let's say somebody's retired and they haven't done Shabbat in a long time, on a Friday night together. Okay, so and maybe one party is more interested in doing it than the other, right? Okay, so you know what? Put in some effort, make it fun, make it interesting. Get somebody to cook your wife's or your husband's favorite dish. Whatever it is, it's going to take effort. It's not easy to implement all of a sudden a lifestyle change just like that overnight. But the benefits of it are absolutely incredible. It actually has a profound effect. And especially if you say, you know what, for the period of time that we're together, we're going to put down the cell phone. We're not going to turn on whatever other device there is. We're not going to look on the computer. We're here together. That's it. And so all of these things that Shabbat offers, so even without, he's saying, even though this is not the primary reason for Shabbat, because God said, I created the world in 6 days, rested on the seventh, and so should you. It turns out, though, that there's a residual benefit that cannot be overemphasized. Okay. So this is the first piece of very, very practical advice that the Rebbe gives. We want to build stronger family relationships, sturdier families, marriages, whatever it is. So we need to learn and to emphasize the value of family according to the Torah's perspective. And then it's not enough to just learn that attitude, but it's important to take that attitude and find a practical means of implementing it. Okay? So that's point one in terms of a practical element. Now, there's another underlying theme that we can talk about that very much pervades the Rebbe's teachings about family that's also worthy of thinking about. So when people are looking to strengthen their relationships, they make sure that there's certain factors in place. You have to have factors like gratitude, active listening, quality time together, right? Respect was mentioned before. All of these things. So it's if somebody just in general, it's a wise thing to think about where am I with those things in my life? Where am I with those basic values and ideas related to relationships? But in a similar vein, the Rebbe would emphasize that we have to make sure that there's certain things, we have to ensure that important things aren't missing from our relationship. But it's not just that it's separate elements, but the very foundation of a relationship, somebody said it before, is that we have a foundation on the basis of a shared goal and a shared vision. And actually, the blessing that we wish one another when somebody gets married is that you should build a home al yesodei haTorah v'hamitzvah, on the foundations of Torah and mitzvahs. The shared goal in a home, a shared spiritual goal, a shared godly goal, becomes literally the bedrock in which a family and a home is established. And again, whether one has a spouse, whether one doesn't, whether one has children, whether we don't, you have friends, you have the family or the household. However you make your household, if you want it to be strong, you have to determine what you're about. What's important to you? What are the foundations upon which it's built? And this, the Rebbe says that we have to check the very foundation. This is text 9 on page 44. I have learned with pleasure of your forthcoming marriage. Send you and your bride blessings of Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. It is superfluous to underscore that from the moment of marriage, a new era begins in the life of two persons who have united into one to build together an eternal home among our people Israel into posterity. As in the case of building a physical home, the important thing, even to those who otherwise attach much value to external appearances and superficialities, is the solid foundation upon which the entire edifice is to rest. So, and more so, in the case of the spiritual home, the important and vital conditions are not to be found in superfluous aspects, but in the reliability and character for the material to withstand all sorts of tests and all kinds of weather. What I mean by the solid foundation of the Jewish home needs no elaboration to you. Throughout the ages, the Torah and mitzvahs have been the solid foundation of our people and have given us courage and strength to endure the most terrible, inhumane persecutions and tests to the limits of self-sacrifice and martyrdom. This power of self-sacrifice for Torah and mitzvahs has made us indestructible. Talk about a foundation. It is my heartfelt wish to you, and I am confident of it, that you and your chosen one will together build your home from the start upon the foundation of Torah and mitzvahs with an unshakable determination to make your home Jewish in every way, in thought and in deed, thus assuring yourselves real happiness, Yiddish happiness. So why is that the foundation? Why is that the foundation? So somebody might conclude that the Rebbe is a religious leader. He says, okay, listen, it's my job. I'm a rabbi. What else are you going to describe the foundation? Describe the foundation. Let's, I'm going to use whatever I can. Somebody's getting married. Let's talk to them about the Torah. Let's talk to them about the mitzvahs, right? So So what the Rebbe is saying here is that not only is Jewish observance, it's good for Judaism, he's saying, but it's vital for a family relationship. And the question is why? So in lesson 1, we learned this idea that there's no divide. This idea of the material and the spiritual, they are intertwined, meaning, purpose, it pervades everything we do from a Jewish perspective. And of course, in the family unit, this brings peace and brings blessings, etc. But there's also a psychological reason and explanation why Torah and mitzvahs are optimal and fundamental and foundational to a home. As human beings, we need to create these connection points, how and why we connect with one another. So families create these things by providing for each other, by providing for our emotional and our psychological and our material and our need for safety and all of those things, right? But a relationship that's built exclusively of fulfilling needs, right? Whether they're basic needs or very advanced needs, makes no difference. At the end of the day, it can ultimately come apart comparatively easily if it's only built on my needs. The minute that everybody sort of is focused on my needs and your needs are not the same at the same time in the same place. They differ. And they can not only differ, but they can clash. And it's pretty easy for them to clash. And right away, those seeds of conflict with my needs and your needs, they can easily start to grow and sprout and actually become much more than that. But Torah and mitzvahs as a connection point, they're not just behavioral duties, right? But it actually goes to our very purpose, why we're here. And it's something that is beyond me. It's something, you spoke about before about goals. So I can have personal goals, but I can have family goals. And then I can have goals that are beyond me. It's a goal that I aspire to. I aspire to be connected. I aspire for the meaning that Judaism brings to me or to the world. So these things, this shared focus in life, it can actually help us transcend the differences that we have with our needs. And interestingly enough, let's say somebody is not familiar or does not have a lot of Torah and mitzvahs in their lives as a regular piece of their existence. And actually taking on all of this, or a lot of it at a time, is probably counterproductive. It's going to be overwhelming. It's too difficult. It's not going to sit well. It's going to in itself create discord. Not a simple thing. And so the Rebbe offers this advice. He says, start by embracing one single mitzvah. Just one mitzvah. And if you allow it to become a cornerstone of your family life, of course you understand that you can add more later. But let's not talk about it. Let's talk about one single mitzvah. And so starting in this time, in 1974, the Rebbe addressed when he starts to really get into this thing of family. It goes on for the next couple of years that he talks about it regularly. So he introduced 5 mitzvah campaigns, 5 entire mitzvah campaigns that are involving the home and family life. And then the next year he added another 2. So 7 mitzvah campaigns that till today are a major part, let's say, of Chabad outreach. 7 of the 10 that he introduced revolve around the family. That's how vital this became. And you see over here in figure 2.2 on page 46. So he has the campaign about tzedakah, and the tzedakah campaign wasn't just that people should give tzedakah. The tzedakah campaign was very, very focused. The Rebbe said that every home should have a tzedakah pushka. Part of being a Jewish home is that you have a pushka. Today it's widespread. Today I don't know of almost any Jewish home that doesn't have a pushka. It's just something that everybody has. Later on, whatever it is, everybody hopped on board. And the Rebbe said that you should have a pushka, and every single day of the week, every weekday, put, doesn't matter what, a penny. in the pushka. You can add more, of course, but every single day, you make it part of the family life itself, as part and parcel with it, that you put something into the pushka. The other mitzvah was, the other campaign was, that a home should have Jewish holy books, a Siddur, a Chumash, a Tehillim, Tanya, basic Jewish books. Every Jewish home should have basic Jewish books. Part of the identity of the home. The same way we have a mezuzah, the same way you have other identifying factors of a Jewish home, inside the Jewish home, that there should be Jewish material there. To know it's a Jewish home. And he actually identified those things, a Chumash, and a Tehillim, and a Siddur. These are things that every Jewish home should have. Doesn't matter the level of observance or anything. We still have here in Lubavitch, Wisconsin, we still have this dream of making sure that all, 11,500 households in Wisconsin that are Jewish households, somehow or another, we want to make sure that they have this. Still looking for sponsors for different pieces, but we're going to do it. To make sure that there's not a Jewish house that doesn't have Jewish books. It's part and parcel. I'm not even getting into the next stage, which is if somebody has a Chumash that actually might be well done, that they can read, that they can understand, that they might get something, or they might actually crack it open once in a while, maybe look at it. But think about a child in a home that doesn't do much Jewish. They have a Christmas tree. But they also have in a prominent place, they have their Chumash and their Siddur, and they see Hebrew letters. And this kid doesn't go to Hebrew school and doesn't go to to cheder or to shul on a regular basis. At some point, the kid who's precocious, who's 3 years old, 4 years old, whatever it is, gets into it. And what is this? Okay, there's something there. There's an identifier. Let alone for the adults that it provides an opportunity. But it is a factor of a Jewish home. Of course, a mezuzah. Mezuzah is this identifying factor on the outside. And as I said before, for us at least, for those of us in this class, I want you to think about the next time you touch your mezuzah, walking in or going out of your home, think about this idea that I'm walking into the Beis HaMikdash. I'm walking into the temple. That's what I'm doing when I walk in. I touch the mezuzah, stop and think for a second. Hopefully it'll get into your head. You'll remember this for the rest of your life. I'm about to walk into the Beis HaMikdash. I've just walked up. Here in Wisconsin, it's not hard. If you tried to walk on your walkway after it's snowed and it's icy and you feel like you're about to fall and whatever, you say, I made it to the front door. Don't let go, by the way, then you can start slipping right there, but that's a different story. You kiss the mezuzah, you say, I'm here. This is it. Of course, Torah study was also, it was when the Rebbe introduced this idea of Torah study, it was specifically that parents should study with their children. Parents should take a moment and actually engage in that together with their children. To open up, whether it's the Aleph Beis or whether it's a Siddur or whether it's a Chumash, to actually spend a few moments together bonding, but in Torah study. Shabbat and holiday candles, of course, is done in the home. Kosher, listen, the heart of every home is the kitchen. That's where really the real action is. Kosher is that. And finally, family purity, Taras HaMishpacha, the laws of mikvah and Jewish marital law. So these were all campaigns that were introduced around this time, specifically as saying, take one of them. Don't do all of them at once. Choose one and do it all the way. One of them. And this gives additional points of connection where the home becomes sort of this durable foundation of Judaism. I want to finish our discussion today. Actually, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to actually finish our discussion, and then we're going to watch a video. I skipped one, but we're going to watch a video where the Rebbe advises people to introduce some of these mitzvahs into their homes and into their relationships. But I want to make one more point, very interesting point. The fear with all of this, and it's actually a fear with religion in general, with mitzvahs or Torah in general. Many people have a fear of losing their individuality. If we're supposed to talk about a home, and we're talking about whether it's a marriage, whether it's any kind of home, and here we speak about the fact that in the home we have to have these different things. Well, what about, where's my self-expression in all of this? Where's my individuality in all of this? Don't I get lost? I can get lost if the family is so important, so me and my siblings, or how do I still maintain that individuality? And so really it's the opposite side of this coin of sort of getting lost or the importance of the family unit. Interestingly enough, this is addressed in some letters from the Rebbe with in Israel. Of course, we all know about the Alitzim, the pioneers in Israel. And early on in the state, the big major thing, and it went on for many, many, many years, it's pretty much defunct now, was the kibbutz movement. And the kibbutz movement came, those who made Aliyah, many of them were coming from, or at least the early settlers were from socialist countries. And they wanted to recreate this in these collective farms, the kibbutz. Now, there's some very strong letters from the Rebbe, some negative things about the kibbutz, the fact that the families were broken up, where kids would sleep all together away from the parents or whatever. And today we understand that that's really a very like unsavory kind of thing. I didn't even mean that, like we go much further, but whatever. That's not a good thing. But what about the concept itself of this collective? And the Rebbe says over there, interestingly, he says the balance that we need between community or the collective and the individual is that ultimately the whole collective unit is ultimately about that the individual should be able to achieve their greatest and highest self. So interestingly, both are needed in different times and places, but if the emphasis is only on the collective, we're missing the point. So let's take a look at 10a and 10b. The Talmud in Sanhedrin 38 notes that just as people's faces differ from one another, so do their minds. Therefore, individuals attain contentment and wholeness when they actualize their personal and unique potential in its fullest measure. This level of satisfaction is not found in the same extent when they engage in matters that they share in common with others. Instead, this highest sort of level is achieved through engaging in things that they excel at and that sets them apart from their companions and surroundings. This achievement allows them to express their essence. On the other hand, human nature is not to live in solitude. It's not good for the human to live alone, as it says in Genesis. And it's our nature to seek social interactions that allow us to reach our completeness. So he continues in 10b. On the one hand, collective living is essential because it provides a structure for people to share resources through which great things can be attained, greater even than the sum of the individual strengths. On the other hand, however, collective living is not an end for itself. It's a preparatory stage to the development of each person's individuality and uniqueness, allowing it to be realized in the best and to the fullest measure. Often, the idea of collective living arouses in members an inner resistance against the order that seeks to subdue the individual's uniqueness and endeavors to transform the individual into a member of the larger block. By the way, the Rebbe came from Russia, right? He saw communism in its birth, right? He's born in 1902. He's a child and then a teenager as the revolution is going on and all of this. He's very, very sensitive to this. If however people are informed that their collective living leads to personal development and maximizes their ability to reach even greater personal goals by freeing them from the worries of less important goals, because the group utilizes its increased capacity to provide for everyone's basic needs without wasting critical time and resources, it would not only neutralize their natural resistance, but increase their passion and commitment to their roles within the group. This letter was sent to one of the leaders of the kibbutz movement who asked the Rebbe. He had sent the Rebbe a book that he had written about the kibbutz. The Rebbe had all kinds of comments on the book. And then he said, since you're sending it to me, I want to share some thoughts about the movement. It's a tremendous mistake to suppress individuality and instead to elevate the collective above it. And so he reasons that while there's tremendous significance in communities, the purpose is not to suck up and subsume the individual within the community, but rather quite the opposite. It's supposed to be a collective that allows people to nurture and to empower the individuals within that group. And he says that families too, families have the same idea. The worst thing is a wonderful story of that somebody came to the Rebbe and he said, I don't understand what happened. I raised all my children the same. They all went to the same schools. They all went to they had the same background. Most of my kids, they followed the straight and narrow. They went to yeshiva. They did all that they were supposed to. I have one kid who just totally rebelled against all. What did I do wrong? I don't understand. We did everything. The Rebbe said, you said it at the beginning of your sentence. You treated all your kids the same. He said every child needs something different. Of course, within a framework of, certain boundaries, but treating every kid the same is the wrong way to go. A kid is different. Every child needs different things. Every child is unique and an individual. This idea was something that was emphasized also in the home life. And again, it goes to show this idea. The Rebbe would say, so here we're talking about these campaigns. That primarily, they deal with adults. The Rebbe said, no. That thing with the holy books, let's say, the Rebbe said, every child in their own room, they should have their own, with their own cover, with their own name in it or on it. They have to feel that it's theirs. They should have their own pushka in their room. It's theirs. When they get that penny in the morning, they should go run to their room and put it in theirs. They have to start feeling ownership over it. Not just that the family, this is what we do as a family. So there you have both elements. You have the family who's involved, and this is what the family does, and this is part of our family cohesion. This is what we stand for as a family. And within that, even from childhood on, from very young childhood, I'm talking about 2 years old, they know already that this is something that I do. And I would emphasize, for example, that little girls from the youngest of ages should join their mothers and light Shabbat candles. They should have their own candle next to their mothers, maybe smaller, whatever it is, but they should feel that this is their thing. They look forward to it. They look forward to being a little mommy or a little, young woman. It's like a kid putting on high heels, right? All little girls want to put on the high heels at some point. Some little boys do too. And that's fine. But they want to, hey, I'm here too. I want to be like whatever. And so within all of these things that we're talking about incorporating in the home, we talk about incorporating these things as well, that they shouldn't be subsumed. They shouldn't be forgotten about. They shouldn't be just sort of tagging along, this is what we do. How do we find the unique expression for them in their way? That they not get lost in that picture. Okay, I want to go back for a moment. The last thing I want to do, that video. Hopefully you get the sound. We'll see. No,
I don't think so.
All right, we're gonna do that last video, the third video tonight, talking about some of those mitzvahs that impact the home and relationships.
In the late 1970s, Charles Lamont,
We're trying. We're having some technical difficulties.
he asked the Rebbe about some story.
This is the right one, right?
It's almost like
Trying to get.
it's just
Enough marijuana. Okay. Next week, we plan on discussing an area that unfortunately is all too familiar to way too many of us. We're talking about physical illness and its treatments that come along with all kinds of questions and dilemmas. And the Rebbe, people came from far and wide to communicate with the Rebbe about their health. And so we'll explore some of those responses and perhaps some approach to these questions that maybe can have some shed some light on that in our own lives. Thank you all very, very much. Have a wonderful night. It's great to see you all. Good night.